Alright, so it's time for the major grand comparison. It's Snapdragon 870 versus Snapdragon 870, a device which was released in 2021 versus a device which is released in 2022. Yes, we are talking about Mi 11X from Xiaomi versus the IQOO Neo 6 by IQOO. These are two very identical devices and the fight can go to the brim to see exactly which one wins on here. This is just the beginning. We are going to compare specs and benchmark numbers in this particular video. Later, there will be a camera comparison coming up. There will be a charging speed or a battery backup comparison. And finally, I will be doing a complete review of the IQOO Neo 6, after which I'll be doing a complete review of Mi 11X in 2022 and we will be comparing the two. So if you have any of these 870 powered devices, or if you are planning to buy a Mi 11X new or used, or if you're planning to buy the brand new IQOO Neo 6, watch this video till the end and all the videos in this series because this is going to be very interesting. But before we get into the details, if you haven't already, please subscribe because it doesn't cost you anything and it really motivates us to make amazing content like this. Now without further ado, hello awesome people, welcome to PhoneOps. My name is Kailash. Let's get going. Now, first things first, we have our devices side by side. We have the boxes. We have everything that we need to know about these phones. Now, to the right, of course, you have the Mi 11X and to the left, of course, you have the IQOO Neo 6. I have identical applications on both the devices and yes, we will be doing a classic speed test video between these two later as well. But for now, let's talk about the UI as a whole. Now, when you boot into the home screen of this particular device or this particular device, you will see that almost both of them are at around similar amount of battery. But for fun, but for some reason, the first thing that you will notice is the brightness on the IQOO seems to be a little higher. But those are things that we will discuss in the complete review. Today, we are here to complete the neck-to-neck specifications and then we'll talk about the benchmark numbers. Now, as far as the IQOO Neo 6 is concerned, this is a device which is 6.42 inches long and the Mi 11X is around 6.44 inches. So very similar numbers there. Now, moving on, if we talk about the width, it is 3 versus 3.01. So again, very similar things. And if we talk about thickness over here, what do we have? We have 0.33 on the IQOO Neo 6 versus 0.31 in terms of thickness. This is we are talking about. The reason being the IQOO is a little on the thicker side is because it has a 4700 milliampere battery compared to the 4520 milliampere on the Mi 11X. Now, as far as the weight of both of these devices is concerned, let's actually remove them from the case. Because come on, we are comparing both of them and the in-hand field is also something that will mention a lot and it will really matter a lot. And without the cases is when you'll be able to determine how identical these two phones are. Now, these are very similar in terms of dimensions and the camera layout is starkly different. And in hand as well, these feel really similar. I'll tell you why. Although the Mi 11X has a glass build at the back and the IQOO Neo 6 has a plastic texture at the back, it doesn't feel cheap by any means, but yeah, it is plastic. So what IQOO saves in terms of weight with the back panel, it gives it away with the battery because remember 4700 milliampere and 4520 milliampere. So 190 grams and 196 grams, still the IQOO is around 6 grams heavier. Okay, now comes the interesting part, the specifications. Both of these devices come with an AMOLED panel, but the Mi 11X has an upper hand over here because it comes with a super AMOLED panel, a little better in terms of color saturation and stuff. But both of them are peaking at 1300 nits of brightness. So the brightness is exactly the same. The refresh rate is exactly the same. Both of them have a 120 Hertz, very smooth refresh rate. And as you can see, both of them are similar when it comes to smoothness. If you see any changes, it might be because of the user interface. One more thing to notice, when you are laying it flat on any surface, the IQOO doesn't shake at all. But because of the camera bump, the Mi 11X tends to sort of, shiver. So that is one difference. Now the display size on both 6.62 inches on the IQOO Neo 6 and 6.67 inches on the Mi 11X. Both of them are running a 20:6 aspect ratio. So very similar stuff once again. Now the resolution on both of them is 1080 by 2400 if I'm not wrong. That is absolutely right. The screen is to body ratio on the IQOO Neo 6 is 85:20 and on the Mi 11X is 85:90. So once again, these things are not separating these devices apart at all. These are absolutely similar numbers we are talking about. Even the pixel per inch on the display is 398 versus 395. So once again, nothing to separate there. Now the protection on the IQOO Neo 6 is not mentioned, but on the Mi 11X it is Gorilla Glass 5. So once again, the Mi 11X has the upper hand over here. Now apart from this, if we talk about the camera specifications, the IQOO Neo 6 has somewhat of a upper hand over here, because first it comes with a 64 megapixel camera instead of a 48 megapixel camera. The IQOO Neo 6 does have optical image stabilization on the main lens versus the Mi 11X it doesn't. Ultra wide on the IQOO is 8 megapixel and the same on the Mi 11X. But if we talk about the macro, the Mi 11X has a 5 megapixel macro sensor versus the IQOO having a 2 megapixel macro sensor. Not that macro cameras will determine your daily usage and stuff like that, but yeah, those hardware differences which are there, they definitely have to be mentioned. Now talking about video, one strong highlight which really attracted me towards the IQOO Neo 6 is 4K 60 FPS recording. So the Redmi Note 10 Pro is recording me at 4K 30, but I do prefer 4K 60, which is available on the IQOO Neo 6, and on the Mi 11X we have 4K 30, and if the device heats up, that recording would stop. So that is an issue that I've had with the Mi 11X for a very long time. Now as far as the selfie shooter is concerned, the Mi 11X has a 20 megapixel front camera versus the IQOO Neo 6 having a 16 megapixel camera. How good are these lenses? Because understand, megapixels are not everything. Software algorithm matters a lot. So in the long run, when I do a camera review between these two, we will see which one has a better camera comparison. Now both the devices are powered by a Snapdragon 870. IQOO comes with a minimum of 8 gigs of RAM. 11X comes with a minimum of 6 gigs of RAM. Maximum 128 on the 11X, maximum 256 storage on the IQOO Neo 6. Now it is said that the Mi 11X has DDR5 RAM and the IQOO has DDR4X, but in my tests I've found that this one has DDR5 as well. All in all, if you ask me, these are neck and neck. I feel from the initial impressions of using the IQOO Neo 6 for 2 to 3 days, and I have been using the Mi 11X as a personal for at least 8 to 9 months. I would say the display is slightly better on the IQOO Neo 6, but that's not what we are here for. That will be there in the complete comparison. Now, one interesting thing to note before we move to benchmarks is the Mi 11X comes with a 4520 mAh battery. The IQOO Neo 6 comes with a 4700 mAh, but the major striking difference between the two is the IQOO comes with a 80 watt fast charger, and the Mi 11X comes with a 33 watt fast charger. Now in the real world, how much difference does that make to you? I'm going to drain both of these phones to 0% tomorrow or day after, and then I'm going to do a 0 to 100 charging test and see what exactly is the difference that you will notice. Now let's talk about the benchmark numbers over here. The first thing that we will note is the CPU throttle test. Now we've done a CPU throttle test, we've done AnTuTu benchmark, we've done Geekbench, and we've also done 3D Mark graphics test. Alright, so we ran 100 threads for 15 minutes on both the devices. We've turned airplane mode on, and this is what the results are. Now the IQ throttle to 76% and the CPU throttle on the Mi 11X to 92%. The average score was 262 315 on the 11X and 271 140 on the IQOO Neo 6. Now, although the IQOO did throttle much more compared to the 11X, the performance consistently was higher. The maximum score on the IQOO Neo 6 was 317 495, and look at this, on the 11X it was 276 122. So yes, definitely it did throttle, but overall it maintained the cooling better and it did a better performance in terms of the CPU throttling test. Now moving on, if we talk about AnTuTu benchmark over here, let's talk about the numbers as far as AnTuTu is concerned. So on the IQOO Neo 6, we got 713,617, and on the Mi 11X, we got 698,253. That's the benchmark numbers. But if you'll individually see, the numbers do vary a lot. Like for example, in the CPU section on the IQOO, we got 184,238, and on the Mi 11X, we got 192,048. On GPU, we got 242,782 on the IQOO, and on the Mi 11X, we got 244,074. Now, once again, when it comes to memory, we got 127,355 on the IQOO Neo 6, 111,821 on the Mi 11X. Last but not the least, in UX, we got 159,242 and 153,10 on the Mi 11X. So once again, IQOO over here, of course, with the same chip is doing a better job. Now, last but not the least, we have two benchmarks to go. We will talk about Geekbench first on both the devices to see the single core and multi-core score. So on single core on the Mi 11X, we got 984, 954 on the IQOO, 3283 in multi-core over here, and on the IQOO 2992. Very, very weird that in Geekbench IQOO Neo 6 is losing. The last but not the least, we'll talk about the graphics performance of both the devices. And as you can see, we have 3D Mark installed on both of them. All right. Now the IQOO Neo 6, we have 1222 as the best loop score, 1239 as the best loop score on the Mi 11X, and the lowest on the IQOO was 1213 and 1014. So this once again is a result of extreme throttling. Now, very, very similar numbers, very, very similar specifications. But overall, the IQOO, in my opinion, is a slightly better phone. It'll give you a slightly better camera experience, slightly better gaming experience. Gaming experience, in my opinion, is much, much better compared to the 11X. But yes, 11X doesn't disappoint as well. So wait for the remaining videos of comparison of these two devices. Let me know in the comment section what do you think about this specs and benchmark comparison of Mi 11X versus the IQOO Neo 6. See you in the next one. Keep smiling. Take care. Goodbye.